Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to a brand new legal breaking reporting video analysis update. We have a good total of 9 legal breaking reportings, video analysis updates that are factual and unfabricated for you guys this morning. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, our morning briefing by the Washington Post, aka the 7. And then we have 2 other reportings, one by the New York Times and then one by the Hill, read by Animated Voices, ladies and gentlemen. So we will be taking looks, rates, as well as listens. Let's get into our first reporting.
President Donald Trump appears ready to launch an attack on Iran. That's where we're starting the 7 from the Washington Post. I'm Hannah Jewell. It's Friday, February 20th. Let's get you caught up with today's 7 stories. Current and former U.S. officials told the Post that the Trump administration could launch an extended military assault on Iran within days. The Pentagon has amassed an immense strike force in the Middle East in recent weeks. The military buildup coincides with recent meetings between U.S. and Iranian officials aimed at negotiating changes to Tehran's nuclear program. President Trump was ambiguous about his plans yesterday, speaking at the inaugural meeting of his Board of Peace.
And now is the time for Iran to join us on a path that will complete what we're doing. And if they join us, that'll be great. If they don't join us, that'll be great too. But it'll be a very different path. They cannot continue to threaten the stability of the entire region, and they must make a deal. Or if that doesn't happen, I maybe can understand. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But bad things will happen if it doesn't.
Regional diplomats initially thought that the Trump administration's military pressure on Iran was meant to push Tehran to offer greater concessions in nuclear negotiations. But they now believe Iran is not willing to make key concessions. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is eager for the U.S. to launch a major attack on Iran. And Trump has publicly raised the possibility of toppling Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The U.S. and Israel would have a huge military advantage in any conflict with Iran. But such a strike still risks U.S. combat fatalities and American entanglement in an extended war. A majority of Americans think President Trump's deportation campaign is going too far. That's number 2. 13 months into Trump's second term, a growing majority of Americans have soured on his handling of immigration. In a new poll by the Post, ABC News, and Ipsos, 58% of Americans said Trump has gone too far deporting undocumented immigrants. That's a rise of 8 points since last fall. The survey also found that a slightly higher number, 62%, oppose the aggressive tactics of ICE. The widespread negative views of Trump's immigration crackdown underscore a stark political reality for him. The polling suggests that immigration may no longer be a reliable campaign issue for Republican lawmakers, many of whom are increasingly worried about their chances of maintaining full control of Congress in the midterm elections this fall. Number 3. The Justice Department is struggling to meet President Trump's demands to find election fraud. For years, Trump and his allies have pushed conspiracy theories about his election loss in 2020. The White House has directed the Justice Department to investigate and prosecute non-citizen voters. But the Justice Department's efforts so far have not yielded results. That is in large part because the types of rampant voter fraud that the Trump administration has described have never been found. This morning, the Post reported that the president has grown increasingly frustrated with the lack of action. Advisors say his frustration has led to his recent pushes to change how elections are run. Trump has proposed nationalizing elections and requiring voter ID, which he lacks the authority to do unilaterally. Number 4 is a Post exclusive. After leaving the World Health Organization, Trump officials have proposed a much more expensive replacement. Last month, the U.S. formally withdrew from the WHO. It came a year after Trump announced his plans to pull out of the Global Health Alliance. His problem with it was in part about its cost. Trump accused the WHO of demanding unfairly onerous payments. But now, the Trump administration is proposing spending $2 billion a year to replicate the WHO's global disease surveillance and outbreak functions. That would require recreating laboratories, data sharing networks, and rapid response systems. The $2 billion price tag is about 3 times what the U.S. contributed annually to the UN Health Agency to access its existing systems. Public health experts said the U.S. effort would not only be costly, but also unlikely to match the WHO's reach. Number 5. A strong nor'easter is expected to form near the mid-Atlantic coast this weekend. If you've just had a tantalizing taste of spring, then I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. More bad weather could be on the way. A strong storm could bring snow, strong winds, and travel disruptions to cities from D.C. to Boston. There's a chance of heavy weekend snow, but that depends on a lot of different factors and how weather systems develop in other parts of the U.S. But for now, it's most likely that snow will grow from late Sunday in the mid-Atlantic and then move into the Northeast on Sunday night and Monday, which could make for a pretty rough start to next week. To get all the details about this storm and which cities are most likely to be impacted, click the link to our newsletter. You can find that, as always, in our show notes. It was a golden day for American women at the Olympics. That's number 6. There were 2 amazing comebacks on the Olympic ice in Milan yesterday. The first was in the hockey rink. The U.S. women's team defeated Canada in overtime after trailing for most of the game. Hillary Knight scored late in the third period to tie things up, and Meghan Keller won it in a gripping overtime. Then, Alyssa Liu clinched gold in the women's figure skating. She is the first American woman to win individual gold since 2002. Her comeback was a longer story. She first emerged on the scene as a child prodigy at 13. But the huge expectations caused her to burn out. She retired from figure skating at 16. But she decided to return, this time on her own terms. She wanted to choose what she wore and what she ate and have more control over her programs. Last night in Milan, it paid off. She was amazingly calm and composed, even as her opponents fretted. She showed off her best-in-class spinning ability, intricate footwork, and landed 7 triple jumps. It was a joyous performance and enough to launch her to the top of the podium. Tragically, that's it for the skating in these Olympics. The closing ceremony is on Sunday. And at number 7, brain rot is real and you might have it. If you haven't heard the term brain rot, that's probably a good sign that you're not afflicted. It's a slang term for the idea that spending too much time online is harming our brains. And it turns out the concept is backed up by some scientific evidence. Research suggests that high use of social media and artificial intelligence does affect our attention and memory. A study published last year of 7,000 children across the country found that more screen use was associated with reduced cortical thickness in certain areas of the brain, like the part that allows for higher-level thinking, memory, and decision-making. If you're worried about brain rot, there are steps you can take to fight back. You can keep screens out of the bedroom, especially for children and adolescents. You can also be careful about your chatbot usage, install app blockers to limit scrolling time, and just say no to technologies that promise to do all the thinking for you. It's a beautiful thing about podcasts, then, that you can listen in while being productive, exploring nature, or exercising, keeping your brain perfectly intact. That's the show for this week. The staff writers of The Seven are Jamie Ross, Izan Akabau, and me. Special thanks to Lucas Trevor for producing this week, and more special thanks to Amy Parlapiano and Rena Flores. John Taylor is our editor. Copy editing by a rotating crew of helpful Londoners: Leo Sands, Victoria Craw, Kendra Nichols, and Brian Molasix. Mixing and sound design is by Jim Briggs and Dustin Garish. Our theme music is by Edith Mudge. I'm Hannah Jewell. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend. I'll meet you back here on Monday.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into our 8th reporting. That is factual, non-fabricated, and more that you need to know about by the New York Times. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, please make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy for more factual, non-fabricated, legal breaking reportings, video analysis updates, and more that you need to know about on this side of politics.
Epstein built ties to U.S. Customs officers, prompting criminal investigation. This article is by David Enrich and Steve Ader, and read by an automated voice. One of Jeffrey Epstein's greatest skills was building and exploiting connections with those who had the power to help or hinder him. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, that included the federal customs and border protection officers who inspected the people and goods that were going to and from his private hideaway. Mr. Epstein dispensed food, helicopter rides, financial advice, and even musical gigs to a handful of CBP officers stationed on St. Thomas, the American port of entry that was near Little St. James, an island that Mr. Epstein owned. At the same time, Mr. Epstein enjoyed concierge services from some of the customs officers in St. Thomas, according to emails and other records recently released by the Justice Department. They whisked him through inspections, and they helped him troubleshoot when he encountered problems at airports on the mainland. Starting in 2019, those chummy relationships became the subject of a criminal investigation, the records show. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Homeland Security, as well as federal prosecutors, spent more than a year looking into whether CBP officers in St. Thomas allowed Mr. Epstein and his guests to avoid scrutiny as they entered the country. The outcome of the investigation, which focused on at least 4 CBP officers, including a supervisor, is unclear. There is no record of the offices having been charged with crimes in connection to Mr. Epstein. Spokesmen for the FBI and CBP had no immediate comment. The emails and other records show how Mr. Epstein, a master networker who traded favors with presidents, billionaires, superlawyers, and Hollywood celebrities, also set out to woo usually anonymous customs officials in the Caribbean. The charm offensive took place from at least 2008 to 2016, a period during which authorities in the U.S. Virgin Islands have said he was sexually abusing girls and young women on his island. The criminal charges filed against Mr. Epstein in 2019 covered an earlier time period and conduct in New York and Florida, not the Caribbean. It appeared to be part of a broader effort to build alliances across the U.S. territory, which granted his business lucrative tax breaks. He donated generously to local politicians. He employed a governor's wife. The CBP agents in St. Thomas had the power to interfere with the luxurious, under-the-radar life that Mr. Epstein had built for himself in the U.S. Virgin Islands, including his importation of young women from foreign countries. After Mr. Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor in 2008 and became a registered sex offender, CBP officers elsewhere sometimes pulled him aside for questioning at airports. They sometimes took note of his female companions. In 2013, for example, a CBP officer at Palm Beach International Airport in Florida described intercepting Mr. Epstein, who was returning from St. Thomas. He was traveling with several young women but of age, the officer wrote in a report, which was previously described by Bloomberg News. Mr. Epstein and his associates also appeared jittery about what CBP officers might find if they showed up unannounced at Little St. James. In 2016, an employee alerted Mr. Epstein that CBP officers were circling the island, according to an email released by the Justice Department. The employee instructed a colleague to hide everything until further notice. It wasn't clear what she was referring to. By the time of his 2008 incarceration, Mr. Epstein had a friendly relationship with at least one CBP officer, the emails show. The officer, Carol Montgomery, repeatedly sought Mr. Epstein's advice and financial assistance, including a $200,000 loan after she transferred to a CBP office on the mainland. It is unclear from the emails whether Mr. Epstein provided her with money or if she was part of the federal investigation. "Welcome home, Jeff," Ms. Montgomery wrote on the day he was released from jail in 2009. At another point, when she worked for the CBP in Washington state, she invited Mr. Epstein to visit her and noted that she had read a bunch of foolishness about him in the media. "Keep your chin up and know that I care a lot for you," she wrote. In June 2010, as his period of house arrest was coming to an end, Mr. Epstein emailed Cecile de Jong, who was his office manager in the U.S. Virgin Islands and was the territory's first lady. He asked who was in charge of customs, noting that an official at the St. Thomas airport has been difficult lately. Ms. de Jong said she would look into the matter. It is unclear what came of the conversation. 2 years later, in November 2012, Mr. Epstein planned to give a Thanksgiving turkey to each of the 78 CBP employees stationed in St. Thomas. But an agency supervisor nixed the idea, citing a ban on personal gifts. They can only accept gifts that will benefit the entire community overall, one of Mr. Epstein's employees relayed to him. On another occasion, Mr. Epstein said he wanted to buy the agents new computers. He took agents on whale-watching excursions aboard his helicopter. He invited them to visit his island for lunch. One officer later told investigators that the lunch, which took place in a gazebo, consisted of sandwiches and wine. Mr. Epstein hired another CBP officer to play the steel drums for guests on his island. The officer waived his fee because he considers you a friend, an employee told Mr. Epstein, though, if you wish to give him something, he is appreciative. The officer performed at least twice and offered to provide lessons to one of Mr. Epstein's guests, emails show. Mr. Epstein appears to have struck up an especially close relationship with a customs officer named Timothy Rauch, who worked on St. Thomas as an agricultural specialist from 2009 through 2014. Mr. Rauch later described Mr. Epstein to FBI agents as a wonderful person. Even as he noted his criminal conviction and the procession of Eastern European women who were arriving St. Thomas, apparently on their way to Little St. James. According to the FBI's summary of the interview, Mr. Rauch said he turned to Mr. Epstein for financial advice and thought Epstein would be a good person to know if Mr. Rauch ever decided to run for public office there. Mr. Rauch told the FBI that he would check with Mr. Epstein to make sure he was being treated with fairness and respect, by other CBP agents and would empathize with Epstein if Epstein encountered a rude U.S. CBP official. Mr. Rauch, who retired from the CBP in 2021, said in an interview with the New York Times that his relationship with Mr. Epstein had been strictly professional and that he'd had no knowledge of his sex trafficking operation. Mr. Rauch previously spoke to the Post and Courier in South Carolina. Mr. Epstein collected the personal contact information for other CBP officers, including James Heil, who was a supervisor in St. Thomas. According to a federal prosecutor's summary of a conversation with a lawyer for Mr. Epstein's pilot. While some inspectors would delay J.E. for a while, Mr. Heil and another friendly officer wouldn't give him a hard time, the pilot's lawyer said. Mr. Heil was in regular communication with Mr. Epstein and his aides, including when they encountered inconveniences with CBP officers at other airports, emails show. Mr. Heil, who is retired, told The Times that he'd interacted with Mr. Epstein in his capacity as a professionalism service manager at the agency, whose responsibilities included helping travelers understand CBP procedures and regulations. By the time Mr. Epstein died in a Manhattan jail in August 2019, Mr. Rauch had transferred to the Border Protection Agency's offices in South Carolina and feared that his relationship with Mr. Epstein could come back to haunt him. On August 30, 2019, Mr. Rauch walked into his supervisor's office and shut the door, appearing shaken, according to a memo that the supervisor wrote afterward. He told the supervisor that a female acquaintance had filed complaints with the Justice Department, alleging that while working in St. Thomas, Mr. Rauch had assisted Mr. Epstein in conducting human trafficking of underage females. When the supervisor asked how the woman would know about his relationship with Mr. Epstein, Mr. Rauch responded that everyone knew I was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, according to the memo. After the meeting, the supervisor alerted his superiors in South Carolina that Mr. Rauch palled around with Mr. Epstein, clearing his aircraft, and spending personal time with the convict after befriending him, entering into that friendship through carrying out CBP official duty. By October 2019, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General had opened investigations into the matter, emails show. The precise contours of the investigations aren't clear, but in May 2020, a federal grand jury issued subpoenas to a number of credit reporting companies for financial information about Mr. Rauch. The subpoena was in connection with an official criminal investigation of a suspected felony, according to a letter that Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York at the time, wrote to TransUnion, one of the companies that got a subpoena. A few months later, a similar subpoena was issued for financial information about Mr. Heil and two other CBP officers who had been stationed in St. Thomas. Google also responded to a grand jury subpoena for information about Mr. Rauch. In November 2020, FBI agents and a federal prosecutor interviewed Mr. Epstein's pilot, Larry Visosky, who recalled how a couple of CBP officers had been friendly with Mr. Epstein, according to a summary of the video conference interview. He said he had sometimes flown officers on Mr. Epstein's helicopters and occasionally requested that the CBP office on St. Thomas remain open after hours to accommodate Mr. Epstein's plane. Mr. Visosky told the investigators that he had no knowledge of any CBP officer assisting Epstein in trafficking underage passengers. About 5 months later, in April 2021, FBI and Homeland Security agents interviewed Mr. Rauch. The Times did not find any subsequent records related to the investigation. In the interview, according to the FBI's summary, Mr. Rauch said he was aware of Epstein's conviction involving the abuse of minors, but supported Epstein because he was a good guy to Mr. Rauch. He added that he thought it was a good idea to maintain contact with Epstein because of his status, wealth, and influence. Mr. Rauch said he often boasted about his connection to Mr. Epstein, including after his death. It was an ego boost, the summary noted. Not everyone can say they know a billionaire. Deborah Kamen contributed reporting. Julie Tate contributed research.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into our final reporting for a total of 9 reportings that are factual and non-fabricated and more that you need to know about. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, and that you enjoy for more factual, non-fabricated, legal-breaking reportings, video analysis, updates, and more that you need to know about on the side of politics. Let's get into this last legal-breaking reporting video analysis update for a total of 9 reportings by The Hill. Ladies and gentlemen.
King Charles on former Prince Andrew's arrest. The Law Must Take Its Course, by Tara Souter. King Charles III weighed in Thursday after his brother former Prince Andrew was reportedly arrested, saying, "The law must take its course. I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office." Charles said in a statement obtained by News Nation. What now follows is the full, fair and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. In this, as I have said before, they have our full and wholehearted support and cooperation. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course, he continued. As this process continues, it would not be right for me to comment further on this matter. Mountbatten-Windsor was reportedly taken into custody Thursday on suspicion of misconduct while in public office. The reported arrest came as new revelations surrounding his connection with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein were uncovered. According to the BBC, Mountbatten-Windsor was detained at the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, England. Within the last year, the scandal surrounding Epstein has heated up. The Trump administration faced pressure from both sides of the aisle to release files related to the probe of the disgraced financier, after a joint memo from the Justice Department DOJ and FBI seemingly closed the book on the Epstein case. Under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bipartisan law signed by President Trump late last year, the DOJ released millions of documents to the public. With heavy redactions, officials said, were done to protect victims. Lawmakers also had the chance to view unredacted files earlier this month. Recent files revealed that Mountbatten-Windsor gave confidential information to Epstein during his time serving as the UK's Special Trade Representative for Trade and Investment. Per the BBC, since his ties to Epstein came into the spotlight, Andrew was stripped of his royal titles and moved out of his royal residence.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for these 9 legal breaking reportings, video analysis updates that are factual and unfabricated. If you did enjoy these legal breaking reportings, video analysis updates, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy for more factual, non-fabricated legal breaking reportings, video analysis updates, and more that you need to know about. In the meantime, I will see you guys in about an hour and a half for more factual, non-fabricated legal breaking reportings, video analysis updates, and more that you need to know about on the side of politics.